draw another card? If yes, then use the deal card function to add another card to the user's card list. If no, then the game has again ended. Over here, in the if statement, we can add an else, because if the game hasn't ended, as in they haven't gone over 21 or nobody's got a blackjack, then we're going to ask the user if they want to get another card. I'm going to use a input, and I'm going to ask the user to type Y to get another card, otherwise type N to pass, and I'm going to save this input inside a variable which I'll call user should deal. Now we can check to see if this variable is equal to Y. Well, in that case, we're going to add another card to the user's card list by doing the same thing that we did in the beginning, where we dealt 2 cards to each player, by saying user cards dot append, and inside the parentheses, the thing that we want to append is the output from deal card. So just a quick check to make sure you've got all the parentheses there, and then we're ready to address the else. If they didn't type Y, then that means they don't want another card. Well, then in this case, the game has again ended. So we can say is game over equals true. Let's take a look at the next step. How can we get our game to repeat itself? So hint number 11 tells us that the score will need to be rechecked with every new card drawn, and the checks in hint 9 need to be repeated until the game ends. Notice how we've got this flag, is game over, which is set to true whenever the game ends. It starts off being false, and what this means is we can actually create a while loop, which basically keeps on calculating the user's score and the computer score, makes all of these checks, which are in hint 9, and then repeats itself until the game ends. Let's go ahead and do that. After all the initial setup, we're going to create a while loop, and the while loop is going to be active until the game is over. So we can say while not is game over, then go ahead and carry out all of these instructions. So calculate the user score, calculate the computer score, check that nobody's gone over 21 and nobody's gotten a blackjack, and if the user wants more cards, then they should. If they don't, then the game is over. So let's go ahead and run and test our code. You can see that the first 2 cards we get are 10 and 5, which makes up a score of 15. So 15 is kind of nowhere near 21, so let's go ahead and type Y to get another card. You can see that our while loop is active and it goes back to getting another card, and we end up with 10, 5 and 10, which unfortunately means that we're over 21 and so we lose. But if I tried this and I typed N, then you can see the game ends immediately. That worked perfectly. So now let's go back and tackle the next part. Hint number 12 says once the user is done, it's time to let the computer play. The computer should keep drawing cards as long as it has a score less than 17. So the while loop is responsible for dealing with when the user wants to keep drawing cards. But once that's done, then we can tackle hint number 12, which is how does the computer actually play? What is its strategy? Well, we know that the computer has to keep drawing cards as long as it has a score of less than 17. But of course, 0, which represents a blackjack, is also less than 17, but we don't want it to draw a card if it has a blackjack. We can represent this logic using a while loop. While the computer score is not equal to 0 and the computer score is less than 17, then in this case, we want to keep drawing cards. We're going to take the computer's cards and we're going to use the append to add a card by dealing another card to the computer. And then we're going to recalculate the computer score so that it updates and this while loop is evaluated on the latest score. So the computer score is going to equal calculate score using the computer's cards, And that means that the updated computer score is equal to the return value from calculate score. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that we've got a warning underline for the computer score. And when we hover underneath it, it says the name computer score can be undefined. So what does it mean here? Well, notice that we first define this variable computer score inside this other while loop. Now we're hoping that hopefully this happens first, and by the time we reach line 46, we already have a value for computer score. And this will happen in pretty much all cases. But just in case there is a glitch and there is no value for computer score, or even in the case where this entire while loop is skipped, then this computer score will be equal to undefined. It won't actually exist. That variable won't have been created for us to check whether or not if it equals to 0 or if it's greater or less than 17. So how can we fix this? Well, right up here where we've got our user cards and computer cards, where we defined all of our empty variables, we should go ahead and define this computer score right here. Now we can't set it to equal 0 by default because that means blackjack in our game. So let's set it to a number that we, when we test our code, will know for sure there is an issue. Let's set it to a negative number. So notice how as soon as I've got that variable defined somewhere outside of the while loop, this warning now goes away and it will always have a value, even if it is a value that signifies there's something wrong with our code. And that will help us debug as well. Now you'll notice that we've actually got a similar situation with the user score. The user score is only defined inside this while loop, so it's created as a variable here and only assigned as a variable here. And in future, if we want to use it, we also need to do the same thing. So let's just also create a user score and set it to -1 as well. So now that we've completed hint number 12, it's time to move on to the next video where we're going to go through the final hints. At this point, we've created 2 while loops. The first while loop is for the user, so that they can continue taking cards, and the second